Morning, Teddy.
Good morning, Jack. How you doing?
Oh, just great. How's wife doing?
Oh, she's doing well. Yep.
Good.
Got an appointment tomorrow, but everything's moving as it should.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. No, we know it will go good, go well. So,
Mhm.
all right, let you go.
Mhm. Here we go.
Hey, good morning, everybody. JW.
Morning, JW.
Morning, Teddy.
Morning.
How are you?
Fine. You?
Fine.
Uh,
What's up, Barry?
Morning, Dan.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So I spent last week in Florida. It's a little too warm down there for me.
No, never.
91 with that humidity. And the worst part was spring has sprung down there. My allergies have never been this bad.
Really? Yeah, it was. Where were you?
My wife was playing,
Where were you, Barry?
yeah. My wife was playing in a tournament at the Forest. So we were just south of Fort Myers. And then on Wednesday, I went over to Stewart and played golf with Ray Deegan, a friend of mine. And then the two of us went up to Orlando and played at Orange Tree for a couple of days. So it was a fun week.
Oh, you should have called me. I'm in Fort Myers.
Yeah, I know, but we were so darn busy that it was crazy. So
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Mr. Jewett, there was a nice little comment in the Free Press this morning in that Oakland Hills article that mentioned your name and your contribution to the amateur in terms of moving some of those tournament requests forward. So good for you.
Thank you. Well, it's an exciting time.
yeah.
Morning.
Dave wants to join the Zoom call.
Want to see yourself? You want to see yourself? There. See? Who's that? Who's that? Huh?
Daisy on the call?
Rule 17, you know the rule 17?
Huh?
No? No.
Yeah.
No, that's my pencil. Thank you. Hey, that's fine too.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
For money for businesses, restaurants, bars, and not all of them.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Marvin.
Morning, Marvin.
Hey, I got some information on the 2023 rules update, if you're interested. Local model rule E12 regarding playing a ball from outside of the penalty area will then become incorporated in 2023 into the rules of golf. And I wouldn't be surprised if G9 regarding replacing a significantly damaged club will follow the same route.
Okay. Okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes just to let people filter in. If you can, put yourself on mute unless you have something to add or contribute, just so we can eliminate as much extra noise as possible. Okay, we're at 5 after right now, so I guess we'll get started. I may pause at some point just to let a few more people in if we have some late arrivers, but no big deal. Thanks everyone for being here. I recognize pretty much all the names in the on the participant list here right now, but in case you are new and I missed you, my name is Ted Newton, Tournament Director here with the Golf Association of Michigan. Today, we will be covering rules 17 through 19 and penalty relief, a very important section of rules, a very commonly used and enforced section of rules. I would even venture to say that this is probably what you are going to be dealing with most out on the course, especially in a trouble hole situation. I guess the good thing about these rules is because they are so commonly applied, for the most part, players, especially experienced players, know them, at least their basic aspects backwards and forwards. We will get into some of the more obscure or rare scenarios that do fall under these rules, but for the most part, players have a decent idea how to apply these rules in the course of play. But before we get into the rules, this was in our email the other day, but I'll reiterate it. Our volunteer apparel section on the website is open right now. You can access this by logging into your GAM profile, scrolling down and clicking the blue tournament volunteer button, just as you would to go sign up to work at events. And then there is a drop down with, I believe, 5 options in that area right, in that area right there. And one of the options is volunteer apparel. Select that and you'll see our full shop right there. For those that don't know, these are items that we offered to those that volunteer. Most of the items are polo shirts or outerwear that are by and large available to you at cost, plus whatever it takes to have the GAM logo added to them. So if you see the prices and think, wow, it's a little low, I wonder the quality. These are essentially pro shop quality shirts without the pro shop prices. How we distribute these is we have our 3 order dates, our 3 deadlines. And on those dates, we take all the orders, we put them in with our rep, our supplier. They get them to us in short order, and then we distribute them to people when they work a tournament, or if you're local, you are welcome to stop by the office and pick up your order as well. Like I said, you have these 3 dates. So if you want something in the next little bit, the big date to remember is April 4. So be on top of that if you are looking to add a shirt or another piece. Also the same, we have, if you need a new earpiece of any kind, those are available in the volunteer store if you need an earpiece for the walkie-talkies. Okay, overview of our discussion today. We will review the rules text, the purpose statements, definitions, and options applicable to these rules. We look at some diagrams and pictures. This is a very diagram and picture heavy section, and the USGA has provided those diagrams for the most part, but I have a few extra ones I've thrown in there. My Microsoft Paint skills coming through. And of course, we'll go through a couple on-course scenarios, including we'll watch and discuss a video of an incident or a situation that occurred at the Players a couple weekends ago. If you're well versed in that, I'm sure you're aware of which one I'm going to be referring to. So, okay, Rule 17, penalty areas. Let me see if I need to admit anybody else. No, I think we're good. Okay. The purpose of the penalty area rule. Rule 17 is a specific rule for penalty areas, which are bodies of water or other areas defined by the committee where a ball is often lost or unplayable or unable to be played. For one penalty stroke, players may use specific relief options to play a ball from outside the penalty area. And it's also penalty areas are one of the 5 defined areas that make up a golf course. The other ones, of course, being the teeing area, bunkers, and the putting green, as well as the general area. Okay, key definitions, penalty area, any body of water on the course, whether marked or not marked by the committee, including a sea, lake, pond, river, ditch, surface drainage ditch, or other open water course, even if not containing water, and any other part of the course that the committee defines as a penalty area. So what this does state clearly, not something you'll run into with high level or GAM competition, but just out on a course, courses with rising costs, short staff, getting someone out there to lay paint on a golf course is something they don't have time, the energy, or the will to do in a lot of situations. So you, but that does not make their golf course quote unquote unplayable from a rule sense. They just, any body of water, sea, lake, pond, river, ditch, or surface drainage ditch, other open water course, marked or not, is considered a penalty area. So there are 2 different types of penalty areas distinguished by the color used to mark them. Yellow penalty areas marked with yellow lines or yellow stakes give the player 2 relief options, and red penalty areas marked with red lines or stakes give the player an extra lateral relief option. And in addition to the 2 relief options available for, oh, let's see. Yeah. Quick question we had that under a local rule, can the committee declare an area of water not a penalty area? Yes, that is something I believe a committee can do. I'd have to confirm that to be 100% sure. You could, in essence, make it general area. I don't know why you would do that. Or you can define a body of water to be out of bounds, all the same as well. Oops. Okay, so red penalty area or yellow penalty area. Some of you might recognize this hole right here. This is number 13 over at Fieldstone in Auburn Hills. I was able to get this off the USGA GIN app and their very handy GPS system. Add a little paint, my own touch to it. Most penalty areas should be marked red to give players the additional option of relief. However, where part of the challenge of the hole is to carry over a penalty area, such as a stream that crosses the front of the putting green, and there's a good chance that a ball that carries over the stream could fall back into it, we will mark the penalty area as yellow. This ensures that a ball that lands on the far side of the penalty area before rolling back into the penalty area cannot be dropped on the far side under the lateral relief option. So here we have the hole, we have the ball representing our teeing ground. The general rule of thumb when marking is if you have to carry it, if it's, I guess the design of the hole mandates that the body of water be carried, it is typically a yellow penalty area. In the case here where area in front of the tee box, you could probably get away with marking that red. We do that in certain cases because really there isn't another option for a ball that goes directly in the water. Pretty much the majority of the time, the player just dribble one in there. They would be using probably the stroke and distance penalties so they can get the ball on a peg again and hit from there. But as you see up top, the area between the fairway and the green running perpendicular to the hole, that would be marked yellow. So a ball that would carry that and roll back in would not have the option of being dropped on the green side of that creek right there. All other areas to the side of the hole, these areas on the left-hand side here that don't appear to be water or penalty area. Actually, if you're out there, you see those are marsh areas that do retain water, and we typically do mark them as red. Because they should be for that reason, and also they are a big help to improve pace of play on that hole, because if you had players needing to re-tee regularly on that, that would just be a pace of play nightmare. This is a hole that we always have a trouble hole referee on. I'm sure some of you probably have worked that hole at some one time or another, because Fieldstone is a regular on our schedule. Okay, so looking at the definitions and what they tell us about the rules, the edge of a penalty area extends both up above the ground and down below the ground. That means that all ground and anything else, such as a natural artificial object inside the edge, is part of the penalty area, whether on, above, or below the surface of the ground. So here you see, if you have a ball lodged in a tree above a penalty area that is overhanging inside the penalty area, above the margin of the penalty area, extending upward, that is considered in the penalty area. Same goes with an object on a bridge. If a ball were to come to rest on a bridge in a penalty area, it is considered in the penalty area. If, as it says here, if an object is both inside and outside the edge, such as a bridge over the penalty area or a tree rooted inside the edge with branches extending outside the edge or vice versa, only the part of the object that is inside the edge is part of the penalty area. Okay, when is a ball in the penalty area? Ball is in a penalty area when any part of the ball lies on or touches the ground or anything else, such as any natural or artificial object, inside the edge of the penalty area, or is above the edge or any part of the penalty area. So obviously a ball that is completely outside the edge of a penalty area is considered not in a penalty area, and any ball that is considered that it is all in the penalty area is considered in the penalty area. Where there's sometimes confusion is when you have part of it touching the line, even if it's all on the line, but the majority of it is in the penalty area. It is basically half and half, or it is out of the penalty area. All it has to do is just touch the smallest part of the outside edge of the margin of the penalty area, and it is considered the penalty area.
Hey, Teddy, I got a question for you. In your slide before with the ball in the tree,
Yep.
in the penalty area, because it's in the penalty area, does it still have to be identified as your ball?
I believe in that point it would fall under the standard of virtual certainty.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know if we're going to do unplayable, right, we have to identify that ball.
Yes.
If it's stuck up in a tree. But in this case, we're going to use virtual certainty.
Yeah, identification and virtual certainty, go hand in hand. Now, you can make the argument that you cannot have virtual certainty if you cannot identify it, unless you have an instance of a person specifically seeing the ball, going in there, your shot at that moment, and seeing where it lodged in the tree. When you talk about balls being lodged in trees, it didn't involve a penalty area, but I was on a hole at Cherry Creek a couple of years ago, and there was a tree on the hole where balls just kept getting lodged in the bark. Yet it was kind of tree had some lightning damage to it, and it created almost like a catcher's mitt where balls would end up. And I didn't go through the process of getting binoculars and making sure I identified balls. I just saw it when it go in there. I heard it. It sounded like it stuck. I was able to provide the players with virtual certainty that it was in the tree, and they were able to take an unplayable from that position.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Ted, if the penalty area is not marked, is it treated as a red penalty area or yellow?
It's why we mark them.
Can you clear it?
Generally
Make it
speaking, it would
so that
probably be red.
It's all clear.
Come back
If
with
it's
that.
not marked, it is
In the
red.
definition, it says red.
Yeah.
Yes, if it's unmarked, it's red. And another point to Dan's previous question, The reason that you have to identify the ball on an unplayable lie is because that's your reference point for 2 of the 3 drop options.
Yeah.
Whereas in the penalty area, your reference point isn't the ball.
Yes.
It's where it enters.
Yes. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so a player may play ball as it lies in a penalty area or take penalty relief. The player may either play the ball as it lies without penalty under the same rules that apply to a ball in the general area, which means there are no special rules limiting how a ball may be played from a penalty area, or play a ball from outside the penalty area by taking penalty relief under Rule 17.1D or 17.12. Wait, this is a video I think I can play. Oh, okay. So if you remember, prior to 2019, there were rules about you could not remove loose impediments from penalty areas before taking a swing. You could not ground your club in penalty areas when playing a shot from there. Those are no longer the case. You are able to remove loose impediments. You are able to ground your club. You may take practice swings in the penalty area that do touch the ground. So in that sense, penalty areas are treated like general areas in terms of how what the options you have in terms of playing, in terms of playing the ball. Okay. Just talk about virtual certainty. Here's how we know. If a player's ball has not been found and it is known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest in a penalty area, the player may take relief under Rule 17.1D or 17.2. Once the player puts another ball into play to take relief in this way, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. So you can't put your ball in play, taking relief, and then you may find the ball in the after it's dropped. And that is true even if it's found before the 3-minute search time expires. If you get in there and within a minute you drop a ball and then you come upon the ball, that ball is in play if you have dropped it and put it into play. But if it is not known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest in a penalty area, then the ball is lost. The player may take stroke and distance relief under Rule 18.2. Now, this is a very important definition and is very, comes into play an awful lot when we're out on the course in trouble hole situations. It's said known or virtually certain. What exactly does that mean? The standard for deciding what happened to a player's ball, for example, whether the ball came to rest in a penalty area, whether it moved or what caused it to move, known or virtually certain means more than just possible or probable. It means either there is conclusive evidence that the event in question happened to the player's ball, such as the player or other witnesses saw it happen, or although there is a very small degree of doubt, all reasonably available information shows that it is at least 95% likely that the event in question happened. All reasonably available information includes all information the player knows and all other information he or she can get with reasonable effort without unreasonable delay. So, scenario we often see, an example in a hole this is likely to happen is number 8 at Forest Acres West. It's a long, narrow par 5 running right next to the highway there, out of bounds on the player's right and with a small creek, roughly about, depending on which tees you're playing, but it is very well placed in driver distance range for players on this hole. A player hits this, but as you see, there are trees before it, after it. It is not just a straight shot right to that red penalty area. So a player hits his tee shot left and observes its line as being towards the penalty area. You, being in the landing area as a trouble hole referee, hear the shot hit the trees before the penalty area, but do not see it land either in the general area or in the penalty area. You begin searching for the ball, and when the player arrives and begins his search, you start your stopwatch. You and the player each search the area around the trees. As the 3-minute search period ends, the player says it must have gone in the penalty area. So as a referee, what you have to assist with and come to an agreement on the player on is how you assess and determine if there is known or virtual certainty that the ball is in the penalty area. So feel free to chime in if you've dealt with a situation similar to this, what your experience is, how you feel to best communicate the questions you would ask the player or even his or her playing partners if you face with that situation.
Teddy, I can give you one where I was actually playing in a 4-ball and my partner hit one. We couldn't tell if the ball was lost in a penalty area because just to the left, there was out of bounds.
Right.
And my partner said to me, he said, well, I'll just drop here behind the red line. And I told him, I said, you can't because we're not sure where your ball is. You know, if your ball, Jerry came over, God bless him, and he says, you guys need some help. And we said, yes. I said, we're not sure if his ball's lost in the penalty area or out of bounds. And this was my partner that said that to Jerry, and Jerry kind of looked at him and said, well, what did your partner say? Well, he said I had to go back and hit because we weren't sure it was a lost ball. And he said, well, your partner's a rules official. He knows the rules. So he was out of the hole. But it did because there was out of bounds and there was penalty area, and it was uncertain where that ball was, and we couldn't find it. And at that point, it was a lost ball, and he would have had to go back if he was going to play the hole.
Ted, this is Bill. I had that exact same situation on number 8 a couple of years ago. A player hit their ball, and it did exactly that. Hit the trees. It was near the penalty area, but we couldn't identify the ball. The player's first comment was, this as you put in the example, he said, I'm pretty sure it went in. He said, that was my line of the direction of the way the ball was going. But, we tried to apply at that point, then we talked about virtual certainty and how certain was he really that it went in that area. I didn't see it go in. I could hear it rattle around the trees. We didn't hear it drop. We stood out into the fairway, looked back at the tee, looked back at the penalty area. The final outcome was he finally agreed and said, because I finally said to him, I said, help me a little bit here. We have a principle that's called virtual certainty. And so, on a scale of say 1 to 100, how certain are you there that it actually went into the penalty area, trying to defer to the judgment of the player? He said, well, I think I'm maybe 45, 50% sure. At that point, we said, well, not good enough, I'm afraid. You'll have to go back and retee. But it's a tough call because they follow their line of play and was pretty sure it went in, but we couldn't identify for sure it was treated. It was ultimately treated as a lost ball.
Good. Barry?
Thanks, Teddy. Yeah, I'm like Bill. I've had a number of opportunities to work number 8. In most of the events where we're playing on the West Course, we also have spectators. And it's good that if the spectators know what they're doing, that are watching a particular group, to get them out as 4 caddies is generally very helpful. Now, it's very difficult in that particular situation on the left side to be able to determine where the ball or whether or not it got into the penalty area through those trees. But if you can get somebody to help you out and stand up there around that area, it is helpful. I think Bill's correct. It's unless you see it go in, it's going to be very difficult. The interesting thing is that, and it came up last fall, we had a number of players that drove the ball over top of those trees. And when it goes over top of the trees, it probably does get into the penalty area when it doesn't get anything. So, but I think you've really got to take into consideration any help that you can get, the other players as to what they think. But the whole concept of virtually certain is important from that standpoint. And I think that at some point you have to make a decision. And unless somebody saw it go in there, and is virtually certain that it did, you get them on the cart and take them back to the tee.
Mhm. Yeah, I think in Bill's example, I think a great question to ask the player, it is on a scale of 1 to 10 or a scale of 1 to 100, you know, how certain are you that it is in this penalty area? And if, you know, because only so many of them would, you know the concept of virtual certainty and its standards. And only so many of those would be, you know, quick enough upstairs to kind of get at what you're trying to, what information you're trying to gather from them with that question. Like you said, if he says something, you know, anything under 9, or especially if he says 5, well, you said, well, if it's 5, you're not even close to being certain enough that it's in there.
Teddy, you can almost trick
3-minute search.
Teddy, you can almost trick them into it.
Yeah.
And you can do that by simply saying, hey, wait, I think I see a ball up here. You think that might be yours? I'll go take a look. At that point, you go from 95 to 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry, I certainly didn't ask the question to try to trick the player. That wasn't the, I didn't, yeah,
I know.
although that would be fun.
That,
Barry,
but, you know, it's
yeah, that's not, we're not trying to do that to them, but you know, I did try to ask them, you know, how really reasonably certain he went in, and then they'll, at least in this case, the player backed up and said, you know, I really am not sure, you know, and at that point, that made the decision.
Yeah, there's so many factors that go, and you know, when it involves trees and the infinite number of different directions a ball can go is when it starts rattling around in trees. The height of the grass surrounding the penalty area. Is it closely mown? Is it short rough? Is it long heather or hay? You know, all things that impact how certain you be that the ball is in the penalty area after conducting a search of the area. If there's no trees and it's closely mown and you just can't find a ball, then there's a good chance you do get to that 95% threshold. But you add in all those other variables of trees and long grass and leaves on the ground at certain points a year, that you know, all these things that can impact where, how findable and how certain you can be a ball is in a certain place if you can say it is not in another space, are things that have to be considered when you make that assessment. And another thing is, it's also good to get the other players involved as well, be it in a match situation or a stroke play situation. You know, how certain they are, because as we'll see with another scenario, having, you know, them being comfortable with the player's assessment is very important in this determination as well, in addition to your determination as a referee and how certain you are with what you believe.
Hey, Ted, a quick question.
Yes.
Thank you. What if is the referee? I'm like, no, ain't no way. You did not go in there, and the player's like, yeah, it did. I'm 98%.
Yeah.
Do we defer?
I think, you know, I think that's definitely a situation where you get the playing partners involved as well, and you have to, you know, defend your stance too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's definitely a situation where we might encourage playing another ball. You know,
Okay. Yep.
Use that. Just say, hey.
Yep. Okay.
If you can't come to any sort of certainty, you know, let's press pause on this one. Take your relief, but we're also going to have you take a stroke and distance. Go through that procedure, and then, you know, we'll get involved. We'll get, you know, the OIC, the rovers, you know, gather as much information as possible. That is the great thing about the rules of golf, is you do have a pause button in a sense, or you can bookmark a situation almost.
Mm-hmm.
where you can just kind of put it aside. Let's move on from here. And let's do this, and we'll figure this out later. Now, ideally, you do want to figure that out as soon as possible.
Right.
But that is an option that if you can't come to any certainty, and you as a trouble hole official want backup, you don't want to be the one laying the hammer down on this situation. You want to have 2, 3, 4 other people in your corner when the decision ultimately comes down. Option you have.
Okay.
Not something that happens a ton over the course
Yeah.
of the year, but that is a good option to use if you ever get in that scenario where a player is being contentious or just flat disagrees with what you're saying. So,
All right. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it.
good, very good question. Mhm.
Hey, Ted,
Yep.
the other thing, as a rules official, you need to observe the player. If he's not even going near the penalty area
Yeah.
for the 3 minutes,
Mhm.
you already know that he's 95% certain that he's not in it. But he waits until after the 3 minutes are over, and then he gives you it must have gone in. So
Yeah.
you can right away tell him that, he's 95%. He wasn't 95% certain that it went in.
Yeah. I think the other way you could kind of put it is you could tell them, okay, if you say you had an infinite amount of time to search this area in and around the penalty area, would you say there's a better than 5% chance you would find this ball outside of the penalty area? And if he says yes, then Yeah.
Ted, I actually had that happen to me in a competition
Yeah.
where one of the girls in my foursome was insisting the ball did not go in the penalty area. Oh, I saw it go over this hill. I know it's around here somewhere. Let's look. And after we had exhausted the 3 minutes, she said, oh, well, then it must be in the penalty area. I said, well, a minute ago, you were very sure it wasn't in the penalty area. Well, but now I'm absolutely positive it's in there. So what I said to her was, okay, show me where it entered the penalty area. Let's find a spot. And she goes, well, I don't know. I didn't see it go in. Well, how can you do that?
Yeah.
And that's when she kind of had to back off and say, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. It's tough. It stinks. No one, if you're the player that hit it over there, no one likes to take the walk or the ride of shame back to the tee. You hate it for your pace of play. You obviously hate it for your score. But it is, and it's very tough because as a competitor, because this isn't something that happens at high level golf. Not that high level golfers don't hit squirrely shots. It's because there's often spectators and it's very, very rare to see a professional taking the ride or the walk of shame back because of a lost ball. Out of bounds, perhaps, but the lost ball is something that very, very, very rarely happens at high levels of golf on television. And you feel it is bad luck a lot of the time because we have a limited amount of time to find it, and then you have to play a guessing game, especially on blind shots when it involves trees, on how and where to spend those 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ted, if a player hits toward that area,
yes,
and whether he's certain or not, wouldn't it be a good idea for him to hit a provisional ball and then go up there and, if he's reasonably certain it's in there, or somebody knows it's in there, then he can pick the provisional up and put it in his pocket. And if he doesn't, then he's ahead
ideally,
of
yes, you're absolutely right. I think one thing that makes players apprehensive to do that is that not knowing the intricacies of the rules, something that is pounded into their heads at a younger age is provisionals, that you don't use provisionals for penalty areas. That if Eve, that, you know, I can't do that because then I'll be stuck with it no matter what. We know as referees, the rules are a little more flexible with that in terms of certainty and knowledge of where the ball may be and things like that. So absolutely a provisional would be great, but it's we can't unfortunately, as referees and rules officials, we rule as we're not entitled to the smartest of players. Situations such as that.
Well, Ted, if the player does hit a
even.
provisional, basically he's indicating that he's not virtually certain the ball's in the penalty area.
Yeah.
Because there's, you know, if the ball's virtually certain in the penalty area,
Yeah.
he or she would not be allowed to play a provisional.
Yeah, unless there were a trouble hole official that could provide that virtual certainty that, yes, we saw it go in the penalty area, or they were just unfamiliar with the course, did not know that a penalty area was there. And then when they arrive, they know, oh, I know my ball went in here. I saw it on this line. It is in this area. I knew it was in this area. I just did not know this area was a penalty area.
That is correct, yeah.
That is, yes, yes. Yep. Okay, so relief, how the options for taking relief in a penalty area. If a player's ball is in a penalty area, including when it is known or virtually certain to be in a penalty area, even though not found, the player has these relief options for each for a 1 penalty stroke. First option, it's the option for everything, be it unplayable, out of bounds, lost ball, penalty area, stroke and distance relief. Player may play the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. It does not have to be the exact point. It is, there is your relief area right there. Back on the line relief, the player may drop the original ball or another ball in a relief area that is based on a reference line going straight back from the hole through the estimated point where the original ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area. The reference point is a point on the course chosen by the player, excuse me, that is on the reference line and is farther from the hole than the estimated point, with no limit on how far back on that line. In choosing this reference point, the player should indicate the point by using an object such as a tee. If the player drops the ball without having chosen this point, the reference point is being the point on that line that is the same distance from the hole as where the drop ball first touched the ground. Now, the size of the relief area is measured from the reference point. The reference point must be outside the penalty area, 1 club length, but with these limits on the location of the relief area. Must not be nearer the hole than the reference point, and may be in the area of the course, sit in any area of the course except the same penalty area. If more than one area of the course is located within 1 club length of the reference point, the ball must come to rest in the relief area in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped in the relief area. However, get Oprah in there whenever you can. Model local rule E12 that Marv mentioned just a few moments ago when we were just starting. When taking back on the line relief, there is no additional penalty if a player plays a ball that was dropped in the relief area required by the relevant rule. In this case, we're talking about Rule 17, but came to rest outside the relief area so long as the ball, when played, is within 1 club length of where it first touched the ground when dropped. This exemption from penalty applies even when the ball is played from nearer the hole than the reference point, but not if played from nearer the hole than the spot of the original ball or the estimated point where the ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area. This local rule does not change the procedure for taking back on the line relief under a relevant rule. This means that the reference point and relief area are not changed by this local rule and can be applied by a player who drops the ball in the right way and it comes to rest outside the relief area, whether this occurs on the first or second drop. So basically what this means is because they're taking back on the line relief and where they are taking relief is not nearer the hole than where it last crossed the penalty area. A ball that is dropped, say it was dropped just in this kind of pink area right here that makes up the relief area, and then were to bounce forward ahead of the club line, that is not a bad drop. That would not be playing from a wrong place. That is considered to be a proper drop. That ball is in play, and there is no additional penalty beyond the standard penalty for taking player penalty relief. This local rule is used by the GAM in our competitions. It is on our hard card. And like Marv said, this is something that's probably going to become, it's not even going to be a local rule in 23. It's going to be just part of the rules that when you're taking back on the line relief, it's okay for it to get nearer the hole than the reference point.
Teddy,
Yes.
if the player inadvertently picks up that ball because it bounced forward and he thought he was outside the relief area and drops it again, has he not now played from a wrong place? I know he gets a penalty for touching the ball because the ball's in play. But is it not 2 because he's playing from a wrong place?
My initial instinct is yes. But I don't know for certain on that because it would be incorrectly playing from a wrong place, picking up a ball in play. Bill, to answer your question, is the purpose behind this pace of play? Kind of. I think they just felt it was players were maybe being penalized in a situation where they were not getting a significant advantage, penalized for playing from a wrong place when they were not getting a significant advantage on the field. A ball just bounces forward, or say this area is, a slight downslope. They felt that it was forcing them to play no closer to the hole than their reference point was not necessary. Obviously, they can't be closer than where they crossed, but then the reference point, it wasn't necessary. So not so much pace of play as it was, they just felt this was the equitable thing to do.
Ted, what is the rationale behind allowing that drop that actually goes forward from your instance here on the picture on number 2, where it's gone a little, versus a standard drop that can't go forward? If I've stated the question correctly.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing is closer to the hole than than the point at which it crossed the penalty area, as opposed to if you're taking stroke and distance relief, where that would be closer to the hole than your last shot, as opposed to when you're taking lateral relief. So say you're going, then pretending this is a red penalty area, say you're going 90 degrees from this line right here. Reference point is on that line. Ball that would roll forward would be closer to the hole than the point that crossed, the point at which the ball crossed into the penalty area.
Okay, so you've already gone back?
Yes.
Kind of the point, therefore. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Ted, I have a question about the requirement to play the ball if it rolls forward. Isn't the fact that this, the last paragraph states that 14.3C2 can be applied by a player who drops the ball in the right way and it comes to rest outside the relief area, isn't that in essence saying the player is not required to play that ball, that they could elect to redrop?
I think that's a strong way to look at it. Yes. Yep. And Doug, it is on the hard card. Yes. I would say so. Maybe that's something we'll kind of all look into over the next little bit. But I see what you're saying. So
Liz,
that the reference point and relief area are
Liz
not
is-
changed by this local rule, and that rule 14.3C2, I don't have my book open right now.
Okay. Ted, I have it
Can be
open.
applied by the player. So
Ted, I have the
Yeah,
book
Liz,
open.
Liz is correct.
Liz is correct.
14.3C2.
Okay. Yep. There you go.
Local
Thank you,
rule-
Liz. Thank you, Craig.
Local rule E12 is somewhat unique. It does give the player the choice
Right,
to play that ball or not play that ball.
right.
So the player would be allowed to take a second drop.
Mhm.
So then in Tommy's question, he would not be penalized.
Correct.
Correct.
Well, he's picked up a ball in play technically, right? Because the ball technically is in play.
Yes.
But if he redrops under 14.3C2, he's okay.
If he
Yes.
picks it up for the intention of redropping, he'd be okay, correct?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good. Very good. Okay. Moving.
It'll be interesting to see.
The
if
red
they
penalty
do
areas here.
Make that a rule of golf, whether the player might be required at that point to play the ball as it lies, but we'll have to wait and see what
Yeah.
USGA does.
Yeah.
I don't think many of our players realize they have that option, and I wouldn't encourage them to take that option just for the sake of having them go through another redrop process.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So lateral relief only for a red penalty area. When the ball last crossed the edge of a red penalty area, the player may drop the original ball or another ball in this lateral relief area. The reference point is the estimated point where the original ball last crossed the edge of the red penalty area. The size of the area measured from the reference point is 2 club lengths, but with these limits on the location of the relief area. It must not be closer to the hole than the reference point, and maybe in any area of the course except the same penalty area. So it can be on obviously in the general area, it can be in a bunker, it can be on a putting green. You know, I think saw in the last round of the PGA Championship last year, Phil Mickelson hit an approach shot at 13, 14th hole, something in that vicinity, where it crossed over the green into a red penalty area that was running parallel to the path of the hole. And he had to take a stroke penalty, but he was able to take his relief. His relief area was on the green, about 40 feet away, 2-putt bogey, and away he went. Obviously went on to win. So if a player's, a situation like that with a penalty area very, very close to a green, if a player, has the idea, I can't drop it, or it can't be on the green. Yep. Nope. That's not a problem. He or she is allowed to take penalty relief on a putting green, provided it is obviously in the approved relief area.
And Teddy, that would be really the only time that you would drop on the green, correct? I mean, any other time we're taking relief, we're placing on the green. So in that case, that's the only time that actually you really drop on a green.
Well, it's one of a few times, yeah.
Yes.
The same might apply under unplayable ball rule, Dan.
I'm sorry.
The unplayable ball rule allows you to drop on any area of the course as well.
Right.
So potentially, you could drop for an unplayable ball onto the putting green.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this video going here. I thought I embedded this properly. Okay, well, give me one moment. I'll just bring this up on YouTube because it's all the same. One moment.
say anything against that. I just don't.
So where do you have it personally?
Flag on the right.
You can hear the audio, correct, from the video?
Flag perched on the.
I don't think it crossed up there. I mean, I'm sure they got it on camera. We can take, I mean.
100%. I said you can call a rules official and a camera.
Okay, I mean, I'm a little skeptical.
I got it back here as well.
We thought it was pretty much at the pin, and you were kind of hitting from the right side of the fairway. Yeah, but it is.
I don't think it crossed up here. I don't think it crossed up here.
I'm not going to take a drop that I don't feel 100% correct about. I'm not saying it's all the way up there, but it's not back there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys had the best angle on it, so you'll have to decide that amongst yourselves like you normally would. Yeah. You know.
I mean, I'll go back to my divot and I will. I just didn't think it was slicing that much. I thought it kind of started right and just faded, like kind of at the pin and just faded the right edge.
I mean, that's what I saw. Like if we're dropping all the way up here,
I mean,
like it would have had to cut probably 20 yards from here.
Just so you know.
But not from this point, I don't think. All the way back there, I would say so, but I just did not see the ball was all the way over the left side of the pin, all the way over here. I saw it more at the pin. And then obviously cut at the end.
Yeah, I've never taken a bad drop in my life.
I'm not saying anything against that. I just don't.
So where do you have it personally?
Kind of just on the edge, like just short of the fairway, essentially. Kind of on that cross right there.
That's kind of where Joel just said.
Yeah.
So you have it back where you have it all the way back?
Just short of the fairway, right here. Like kind of just on the corner.
So you have it
like
back
over
here.
the grass bunker.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have it there. It's like not even a question to me.
I will say it was pretty far right. And I just, for me, from the fairway, I did not see the ball cut that much.
Yeah.
From the
Well, we were on
left
two
edge
different
here.
angles, and I 100%, like, it's not even a question in my mind. There's absolutely no way it crossed back. Like 0% chance. That's me.
I was more left.
I was right side of the fairway. You see the 16 there? The ball took off left of the 16 and finished in line with the right edge of the green. Like,
I just don't know if it cut that much. That's not really what I saw, but
I was 5 yards from him on his line. Yeah, I mean, I was next to Burger, basically. I mean,
Anywhere along here is a good compromise between the two.
I mean, it's wrong, but if that's where you guys.
Well, I think
it's wrong. Though, I'm telling you, it's wrong. This is a bad drop here. I'm telling you. I'll drop here if this is where you guys want me to drop. It's a bad drop.
What you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I was walking all the way up to the red stake. That's literally how far left and how much cut my ball had.
I'm gonna go with you in this situation. You have
I'm telling you, you want me to drop here? It's a bad drop. That's all I'm saying. It's way too far back.
I'm not gonna make you do it. I want you to go where you feel you crossed, all right? And if you guys are okay with it, I mean, you got two saying one.
yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not really okay with it being up there. I just, that's not really what I saw.
I'm not saying, Victor, I don't like.
I was close to your angle though.
Yeah, I could have caught the right side of the green, but I also. You know what? I'm gonna drop here for the sake of you guys, but you guys are wrong.
Put a ball in play. Guys, we can agree on it and let's go.
That good there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a wrong drop.
It's way further. It's further. I mean, the problem is, this is the problem. No, I know, but I'm not going to have these guys sit here and do that. I am coming to a compromise, but it's a wrong drop because it crossed way up there.
So that's the part we don't have any video evidence, so I'm just kind of letting you guys work it out amongst yourselves. Come to something comfortable you can do.
Okay. There's a lot going on in that one. So we talked about disagreements over virtual certainty. Yeah, I'll just throw it out to you guys. What was your initial reactions to that? Did you, was there anybody you sided with? Was there anybody that you felt was, and we'll talk about, you know, if you were that rules official right there, how would you have managed that situation? What questions would you have asked of everybody involved? And how would you eventually get to a solution to where you could, you know, get playing golf again?
Well, Mike, I have a question. I mean, this is always confusing, but if you look at the second paragraph under 17(1)(d)(3)/2, that first sentence says, look, the player's reasonable judgment will be accepted even if that reference point turns out to be wrong. I go with the player.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Phil. I agree with that also. It's a game of integrity. It gets back to the player. And the one thing I saw that the ref said was originally not toward in the middle there. He says it's your ball and it's your call. And then at the end, he kind of said, well, you guys are going to have to come up with a solution. In that case, I think the player's got the right to make the call there. It was his ball. It was his angle that he saw, and it should be his call.
Isn't Berger basically saying I'm taking a wrong drop? And the players are also saying you're taking a wrong drop because they saw it back there and Berger saw it up there. If you split the baby, I can't see how that's a correct drop.
Yeah. That is the issue with that. You can't, like, yeah, that was a great phrase you used there. You can't split the baby. Yeah, I don't know how you handle that situation. You know, this isn't March Madness where you can go to the monitor after every possession, it seems like these days. So, and the thing was, there was never going to be an answer where everybody could just look at it, look on a screen and say, okay, yep, that was it. Everybody's good, you know. But, you know, at the highest of highest level, whether or not they have a camera on it and a camera angle that helps them in that particular situation is just nothing more than blind luck, you know, that, yeah.
Teddy, they didn't have,
all following the group behind the greens. You got the blimp, but the blimp can only look at so much. And this group was not, they were not the leaders at that point. This was just captured because they happened to be a featured group on PGA Tour Live. So I think the thing is, and you heard the rule official saying, like, basically tell the guys, you know, we got to come up with a solution here. And from the sounds of things, he got on the phone with the contact in the TV truck or at Tour HQ or whatever. See, hey, what do you have on this situation? What do you know, can you help us out at all? I think at that point, everybody's happy. If we just get a conclusive video, it is what it is, and you go from there. Obviously, they didn't. So at that point, it becomes a he said, and the fact of the matter is, you know, a point of entry for a shot 200, no matter who's, both Hovland and Berger, they had their opinions. Neither of them could be absolutely 100% certain, even though Berger said they have a good idea, they have a rough idea, but picking a point that across, literally a point, is basically impossible. And
Teddy, one quick question: where were the other two players, Hovland and the other player? Where were they standing on the tee?
I believe they said they were in the fairway. I'm not going to queue up
because if they were left of Berger, their angle, that's pure geometry. That angle is going to be different than what Berger has when
Yeah.
he's looking straight down
Yeah.
at that ball. And I don't think that ever came up from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like, you know, it's like the referee in football picking out where the punt goes out of bounds. It's kind of, that's a tough one to figure, you know, it's a best guess a lot of the time. This is, yep.
I saw some marshals in the background. Could the referee not hit the marshal?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Hey, W, can't hear you.
Okay.
Granted, what Doug said is correct about relying on the player's best judgment. But if you've got his two fellow competitors strongly disagreeing when you're out there as a referee, strongly disagreeing about where the ball last crossed the edge, you have to take into consideration somewhat their point of view. And personally, I don't have a problem with how this thing got resolved in some form of a compromise. I mean, like Ted said, picking a spot where last crossed the edge is judgmental, and in that case, you're doing your best judgment. So in that case, it's not going to become a wrong drop area. It's just your best judgment on trying to figure out where the player needs to play from his next shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Craig, had the drop been up where Berger said, would you have had a problem with it there?
If Berger was strongly insistent that's where it was, and if he could convince his fellow competitors that, I mean, his fellow competitors have to be they were pretty adamant that the ball didn't cross way up where he was saying. I think Tommy mentioned this last week, where some video review later on proved that Berger was closer to being right than wrong. But I don't think he was totally right where he was choosing his spot either. I think it was somewhat further back from where he wanted to drop.
I would have went with Berger.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day it came out that Berger, through some video that they did find, Berger's drop would have been correct had he taken it where it went out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I thought the referee did a poor job by not saying, Daniel, it's your decision based on Rule 17(1)D.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Agree as well. The referee should have allowed Berger a little more voice than he did.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah, I think what the dynamic that eventually became at play is Berger just didn't want to be known as a guy that could potentially be cheating, even if he believed in his heart of hearts. He knew it was in his best interest, as not as just in a competitor in that particular tournament, but as a brand, to just let the guys do what they do. No one can say I'm trying to pull a fast one or a cheater or did something I shouldn't have after this. I'll compromise with these guys and I'll be on my way. As with most situations in life, eventually people realize we just got to make a decision and move on and just, cut your losses. And I think that's what Berger did there more than anything else.
Well, but either way, from a semantic standpoint, using the word compromise may not be the appropriate one to use in a referee situation. The referee, in my opinion, similar to what others are saying, should have enforced in some fashion his own internal compromise and say, all right, let's pick a spot, guys. Again, I think that I take exception to the word compromise as well.
Yeah, that is not a word that.
Yeah, I don't think you find that in the USGA rule book.
Yeah. Yeah.
You find your best estimate, and you find other things that suggest you can pick a spot, but I don't think compromise is one of them.
JW was asking a question on the chat. Why wouldn't they talk to the marshals? Those guys are all over the place.
They could have. I think you notice they would have been had to be A, paying attention, B, in a position where they could have a certain viewpoint. Kind of tough because everybody on that hole is on the left side of the hole, and the water, encompasses the entire right side of the hole.
Yeah, but the problem is that in one of the US, what do you call it, US Open tournaments that I worked at, I was on the laser team. And those guys have a responsibility to measure how far the ball goes. So they should have known where the ball went across. I mean, that's what we did.
Well, I think you're getting into like, A, they don't jump in the lake and measure where it landed. And B, it wasn't so much where it landed, it was the path that it took to get there. Obviously,
I thought they would have known where it crossed.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the big point of discussion they were having was Damon and Hovland were of the opinion that it was just a straight push, kind of just went at an angle and stayed on that angle throughout the shot. Whereas, and in Berger's sense, that, the tracer kind of shows it as a slice, as a banana.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of where the issue was there. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so
It was good though, thank you.
Yeah,
That was interesting.
Yep. Look at all the options here that are available for the different kinds of penalty areas. The yellow is you have obviously play the ball as it lies without penalty, the stroke and distance relief, and the back on the line relief. For a red penalty area, you have the additional option of lateral relief and model local rule B2. The committee may adopt a local rule allowing lateral relief on the opposite side of a red penalty area at an equal distance for hole. This is not a model local rule that we have blanket. It's not on our hard card. It's something we could consider putting into play if a hole on a particular course at a particular tournament allowed it, but it's not something like the model local rule E12 where it has it's in for all GAM competitions. Okay, relief must be, now we're getting into no play zones within the penalty areas. So relief must a no play zone, as I'm sure you're aware, you have to take relief. You do not have the option of playing a ball from within a no play zone, whether the no play zone is in the penalty area, in the general area, it does not matter. A no play zone means just that. There is no play from it. Whether or not you are penalized for that depends on where the no play zone is, be it general area, bunker, or in a penalty area. So in each of these situations, the player must not play the ball as it lies when the ball is in a no play zone in a penalty area. So we have this blue, my flowers right here, and the blue line indicating what the no play zone is, and the ball clearly inside of that. Player must take relief relative to the red line right there, they cannot play a ball from that area. That is the big thing. Okay, in each two, when the no play zone on the course interferes with the player's stance or swing of the ball in the penalty area. If a player's ball is in the penalty area and is outside a no play zone, but a no play zone, whether an abnormal course condition or in a penalty area, interferes with his or her intended swing or intended stance or intended area of swing, the player must either take penalty relief outside the penalty area under the rules we covered for 17, take free relief by dropping the original ball or another ball in this relief area if it exists in the penalty area, so what it's saying is if you are not in a no play zone, but you have interference with it and your ball is in a penalty area, you can take free relief by dropping in the penalty area. Reference point is the nearest point of complete relief. So you're basically treating it as an abnormal course condition, ground under repair, movable obstruction, what have you. And you're dropping in the penalty area for no penalty. So what that means in this situation is wherever his point of complete relief was, say that right there, they would be able to drop in a relief area within the penalty area right there for no additional penalty. It has to be in the same penalty area and it must not be nearer the hole than the reference point. Okay. But there's no free relief from interference by the no play zone under when the ball playing the ball as it lies would be clearly unreasonable because something other than the no play zone. For example, when a player is unable to make a stroke because of where the ball lies in a bush, or when interference exists only because the player chooses a club or type of stance or swing or direction of play that is clearly unreasonable. So that means this isn't a blanket get out of jail free card. You can't manufacture a swing or a stance just to have the no play zone in your way. And you can't try and take it. It can't be, you know, deep in bushes where a golf shot can reasonably not be played from and get a free get out of jail from that. You have to exercise a little judgment when awarding free relief from a no play zone in a penalty area. I don't recall many no play zones within penalty areas as part, you know, on the GAM schedule. I think you're more likely to find in a penalty area that itself is entirely a no play zone, but not a small no play zone within a penalty area.
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't remember ever seeing one. Any of you guys?
Yeah, the most like it in the picture, the most likely scenario is a flower bed that is within, you know, manicured, tended flowers within a penalty area.
I did play one course where there was a cemetery within a penalty area, and the cemetery was marked as a no play zone.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
I'd hope so. Okay, so now we're getting into options after a player plays a shot from within a penalty area. So they've hit the ball in the penalty area, they elect to play it, and based on what happens after it, this is what they can do next. So if a ball played from a penalty area comes to rest in the same penalty area or another penalty area, the player may obviously play the next shot as it lies, or for one penalty stroke, they may take relief under any of these options. So the normal relief options are the player may take stroke and distance relief under Rule 17.1D, back on the line relief, or if it's a red penalty area, lateral relief. Under these rules, the estimated point used to determine the relief area is where the original ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area where the ball now lies. If the player takes stroke and distance relief by dropping a ball in the penalty area, so okay, you're in a penalty area, you hit it and it stays in the penalty area, or it goes in a different penalty area and you opt to drop your next shot under stroke and distance relief, and then when you drop, you get a bad lie, a bad stance, and I'm like, oh, I don't want this one anymore. You may take further relief outside the penalty area under Rule 17.2a, and if the player does so, he or she gets one more penalty stroke for a total of 2 penalty strokes. So there's 1 stroke for the original drop, and then to get out of there, you need to burn another stroke. Again, not something that happens a ton, but is important to know. Okay, so when a ball played from a penalty area comes to rest in there, if a ball played from a penalty area comes to rest in the same penalty area or another, the player may play the ball as lies, or for 1 penalty stroke, the player may take relief under these options. The second option, playing from where the last stroke made outside a penalty area. So you're in one, Then you hit the second shot from inside the penalty area. It stays in the penalty area. You may go to where your last stroke was made outside the penalty area and play from there. Obviously, there is a penalty that goes with that. So here are the options kind of drawn out. So under this scenario, you've got player here, hits the shot into the red penalty area. From there, they go from A to B. They stay in the red penalty area. Their options are to do, under this scenario, their first shot would be, they'd be playing their third shot if they take relief under this option. Taking options 2, 3, or 4, under those scenarios, they would then be playing their fourth shot. 1 in, 2 to get out, go back. You're now playing 4 from right there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now we have the scenario where you have a ball that goes into the penalty area. And you try to play from the penalty area and it goes out, but it comes back in. So under this scenario, you have playing the second shot, and that is now your reference point. So you have the option of taking relief from there, or back on the line relief that would put you back there at point 2. Or you can go back to your last stroke, play from outside the penalty area, which in this case would be the tee shot. And under all these scenarios here, because after you've played that second shot, you've got, this is be your fourth shot if you're taking stroke and distance. If you take back on the line, fourth shot, because you're 2, 3 out, 4. This is 2 club lengths, that's 4. Back to the tee, you're playing 4. Okay, so your options when you play a ball from the penalty area and then it ends up lost, out of bounds, or unplayable outside of the penalty area. So you hit it in the penalty area, you hit your next shot, and that shot ends up OB, you lose it, or it's in an unplayable spot. So if the player takes stroke and distance relief by dropping the ball in the penalty area, then decides not to play the drop ball from where it comes to rest, same scenario we just discussed, taking stroke and distance in the penalty area, drop, and that. The player may take further relief outside the penalty area under Rule 17.1D or under Rule 17.2A. If the player does so, he or she gets 1 more penalty stroke for a total of 2 penalty strokes. 1 stroke for taking stroke and distance, 1 stroke for taking relief outside the penalty area. The player may directly take such relief outside the penalty area without first dropping a ball in the penalty area, but still gets a total of 2 penalty strokes. Simply put, a player has nothing to lose by initially taking stroke and distance relief by dropping a ball in the penalty area under this scenario. It's 2 strokes either way. Out and 2 strokes either way. No relief under other rules for ball in penalty area. So when a player's ball is in a penalty area, there's no relief for interference by an abnormal course condition, an embedded ball, or an unplayable ball. You can't take, I'm in a penalty area, well, I want to take an unplayable instead. Because, you know, say you wanted to, because of where the ball came to rest, you wanted to go on that line instead of where the ball crossed. No, if it's in the penalty area, your reference point will always be where it last crossed the penalty area, except in when you're taking stroke and distance. And you don't go by where the ball lies if you treat it like an unplayable lie in that scenario. Okay, moving on to Rule 18, stroke and distance relief, ball lost or out of bounds, or provisionals. Talked about provisionals a bit earlier. The purpose of this rule. Rule 18 covers taking relief under penalty of 1 stroke and distance. When a ball is lost outside a penalty area or comes to rest out of bounds, the required progression of playing from the teeing area to the hole is broken. The player must resume that progression by playing again from where the previous stroke was made. This rule also covers how and when a provisional ball may be played to save time when the ball in play might have gone out of bounds or be lost outside a penalty area. Okay. What is lost? The definition of lost in the rules of golf. The status of a ball that is not found in 3 minutes, that's the key, 3 minutes after player or his or her caddy or the player's partner or partner's caddy begins the search of it when we get into team competitions. If the search begins and is then temporarily interrupted for a good reason, such as when the player stops searching when play is suspended or needs to stand aside to wait for another player to play, or when the player has mistakenly identified a wrong ball. So if you think you've find a ball, you're going to look at it, the clock does stop for that identification process. So if you're 1 minute in, oh, I think I've got it. Let me look, okay, stop. Oh, that's not it. Start the clock again. Time allowed for search is 3 minutes in total, counting the search time both before the interruption and after the search resumes. The boundary edge should be defined by boundary objects or lines. Boundary objects that define out of bounds are when it's defined by stakes or a fence. The boundary edge is defined by the line between the course side points to stake or fence posts at ground level, including angled supports. And those stakes or fence posts are out of bounds. So the fence itself is considered out of bounds. When defined by a painted line on the ground, we don't do this a ton, but it does happen on occasion. When defined by a painted line on the ground, the boundary edge is on the course side edge of the line, and the line itself is out of bounds. When a line on the ground defines the boundary edge, stakes may be used to show where the boundary edge is, but they have no other meaning. Boundary stakes or lines should be white. They don't have to be, but they should be. Obviously, you get a black fence right there, but when we're using stakes or lines, it's pretty much always white, as is the case with us. So relief under penalty of stroke and distance is allowed at any time. Yeah. So at any time, a player may take stroke and distance relief by adding one penalty stroke and playing the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. Player always has this stroke and distance relief option, no matter where the player's ball is on the course, even when a rule requires the player to take relief in a certain way or to play a ball from a certain place. Stroke and distance always there, good, bad, or otherwise. You can pipe it down the middle of the fairway and just say, nah, I'm going to take stroke and distance. No one obviously does that, but the option is always there. Once the player puts another ball into play under stroke and distance, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. This is true even if the original is then found on the course before the end of the 3-minute search. So once you've opted to take stroke and distance, you put that ball in play, unless you announce it to be a provisional. It is in play and that other ball is no longer in play even if found. So like I said, so the other option obviously is when you're playing a second ball under Rule 14.7b or 20.1c3, the two balls option we discussed earlier. Okay. So when a ball is lost or out of bounds, when a ball is lost is when the ball is not found in 3 minutes after player and his or her caddy begins to search for it. If a ball is found in that time, but is uncertain whether it's the player ball, the player must promptly identify the ball and is allowed a reasonable time to do so, even if that happens after the 3-minute search time is ended. This includes a reasonable time for the player to get the ball to the player if the player is not where the ball is found. So if someone else finds it and they yell over to him, hey, I think I found it, it takes them 30 seconds, 45 seconds, that is considered not part of the search time at that point. Yep. Yep. If the player does not identify his or her ball in that reasonable time, the ball is considered lost. Okay, another scenario you deal with, dealing with number 8 at Hawk Hollow. This is a very, very tight driving hole. We'll definitely have someone stationed here during the Michigan AM this year for the stroke play portion. And you got a player, and you're a trouble hole person on this hole. Player pulls the tee shot toward on the left towards his trees. You lose sight of it in the air, but you hear leaves, you think you have a decent idea where it likely landed. Head over to begin your search, and the player soon arrives to search as well. You look for the ball in a good sized portion of the land. It might be like this whole area right here. But eventually the 3 minutes elapse. The player, frustrated, grabs a ball and a club from his bag and heads back towards the tee. After walking about 50 yards, player yells that he found his ball and that he should get to play it because you had him searching in the wrong area. What is the ruling? And in addition, how do you explain this situation to the player? How does that conversation go?
I'd call Craig.
Sorry, man, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Isn't that up to the player?
Yeah, it is.
Completely.
Yeah, it's you make a suggestion, but what you say in terms of where a ball might be shouldn't be taken as canon. Yeah, it's.
Could you gently advise him to stay in the fairway?
No.
I'm kidding.
Not after he's just hit it there, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always ask the player whether he heard it hit anything, and whether he, whether it was a low shot or a high shot, if I have no idea, because that certainly affects the trajectory of where it could end up after it resolves. But ultimately, it's the player's responsibility for figuring out where he should be looking.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask this question. I mean, my habit is on a trouble hole like that, I don't rush right over. If I don't see it drop or see where I think it is in the general area, I wait for the player to get there before I join in. That's just what I do.
Do we hear a lot of crap of, hey, isn't that why you're there?
Yeah, and I think yes, we do. And I think it's important to stress that we're not marshals.
Yeah.
We're rules referees. We're there to help them find their ball. We're not here to spot their ball for them.
Yeah. I think the other thing, especially if you got a situation where a player has played a provisional, especially if they've played a provisional, is you don't want to look for that. If you don't know where it is, but you have an idea, you don't want to look for that ball until they tell you to look for it. Because there's a decent chance they might say, no, I want that ball gone. I like where my provisional is. I'm just going to roll with this from here on out, take my medicine and go from there. Yeah.
Didn't that happen to Mickelson? I think it's at the British Open. He didn't want his ball found.
Yeah, that was actually at Torrey Pines some 20 plus years ago. He was in a playoff. 17 there, he hit it in the ravine, reloaded. They didn't have the ravine marked red. I think they have at some points, at other points they haven't, but hit it in there and put his next tee shot in the fairway and was clearly yelling, get out of there, don't look at it. But some people didn't listen or didn't hear him, and they found it. He had to take an unplayable with the only option from there was stroking distance relief, and that meant going back to the tee even after he hit a provisional. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Could he have claimed on the tee, I'm calling that ball out, and I'm re-teeing? Lost ball?
If he didn't declare it
without even looking?
Yeah. If he didn't declare it a provisional,
that's what I meant.
Ball on play. Yeah, you're right. But at that point, he probably didn't know.
Yeah.
He got up there and saw where it likely was to be and says there's no good option there. Like at that point, he told people, get out of there.
Got it. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah. And he would have had to declare the provisional, obviously, before he made the second swing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good one, and that's one you do unfortunately run into a fair amount. Okay, so kind of like we did with penalty areas, just how, when it's very close, how you determine if it's out of bounds or in bounds. A ball is in bounds when any part of the ball lies on or touches the ground or anything else, such as any natural or artificial object inside the boundary edge or is above the boundary edge or any part of the course. So you look here, look at the white line here. The inside edge of that white line defines the boundary of the course. So obviously, if it's all in, it's in. Just if the slightest sliver of it is above that inside part of the line, you're still in bounds. But once you get over that, the inside part of the line, that's when you're out of bounds. And obviously, if you're all the way out, you're all the way out. When you're dealing with stakes, it's the inside part of the stake at ground level. So again, as long as just part of it is inside the inside part of the stakes at ground level, you're in. But once you get all outside of it, you're out of bounds.
Ted, I'm sorry to ask this one kind of again, but why is a yellow or red, if it's just touching, it's in, but if it's touching white, or I mean, it's out, or it's in the hazard in a yellow or red, but in an OB.
I don't know the logic behind that. I imagine it's just OB is such a penalty that you want to give people all the help they can get.
Okay.
So you might be looking at it the wrong way. If it's touching the line, the red or yellow line, it's in the penalty area. If it's touching the white line, it's in the general area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's in play.
I didn't honestly, I don't know if I knew that. I thought if it was touching OB, it was, I probably did, but anyway.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
The memory tool that they tell you to use is, it's always, if it's half on, half off something, it's always on the smaller thing. You know, the penalty area is smaller than the general area. So if it's half and half, then it's considered on the penalty area. But with out of bounds, the rest of the world is bigger than the general area. So you consider it in the general area.
Thanks. I almost spit out my drink while you were saying that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So now when you're at rule school and they say that, there's always some smart ass that says, well, what about Pebble Beach? The Pacific Ocean's bigger than the rest. Yeah, okay, thanks, genius. But for the sake of this exercise, that's the best way to remember it. Yeah.
Hey, okay, so let me clear up a confusion here. I thought in the penalty area, you have to be over the line to be, if you touch the penalty line in anywhere at all, you are in the penalty area?
That's correct.
Yes. Because I thought you give people the benefits of the doubt if they are just touching it. Okay.
And just to be clear, the penalty line extends up. So the ball really does not have to even be touching it. It can be overhanging it and still be considered in the penalty area, which is not a big deal. Which is not a big deal these days anymore anyway. So it just technically, if it's overhanging, it's in the penalty area.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so what to do when ball is lost or out of bounds? If the ball is lost, the player must take the stroke and distance penalty by adding one stroke and playing the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. The exception is this: a player may substitute another ball under other rule when it is known or virtually certain what happened to the ball. Instead of taking relief, the player may substitute another ball as allowed under rule that applies when his or her ball has not been found and it is known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest on the course and was moved by an outside influence or played as a wrong ball by another player. Outside influence, the video from years ago where the Seagull went on to 17 at Sawgrass, picked up the ball, flew away, dropped it in the lake there. It came to rest on the course in or on a movable obstruction or at a normal course condition, you know, in a garbage can, something of that nature, is in a penalty area, obviously, or was deliberately deflected or stopped by any person. We kind of covered that a few weeks ago under Rule 11.2. Yeah. So when a provisional is allowed, if a ball might be lost outside of penalty area or be out of bounds, to save the player, to save time, the player may play another ball provisionally under penalty of stroke and distance. For a ball that might be lost, this applies when the original ball has not been found and identified and is not yet lost, and when a ball might be lost in a penalty area, but also might be lost somewhere else on the course. But if the player is aware that the only possible place the original ball could be lost is in a penalty area, a provisional ball is not allowed, and a ball played from where the previous stroke was made becomes the player's ball in play under penalty of stroke and distance. If a provisional ball itself might be lost outside of a penalty area or out of bounds, player play another provisional, so on, so forth, till he finally puts it where he's sure it's in play. So this is sort of what we were talking earlier about why sometimes players are skittish about playing a provisional when they think, or I guess compared to being lost or out of bounds, want the ball to be in a penalty area. It's important when you have those discussions with players when they play a provisional and then end up wanting to take penalty relief. You ask them why they took a penalty, why they played the provisional. Why did you play a provisional? Well, I thought it might be in this pond up here. Well, that doesn't work. If they say, well, I didn't know if it was a penalty area, if it was bad country, if it was OB over there, so I played a provisional, but I had it on this line. I didn't see it in any trees, and it has to be in this penalty area right here now that I'm up here. Then they're good. Okay, moving on to unplayable ball, Rule 19. Rule 19 covers the player's several relief options for an unplayable ball. This allows the players to choose which option to use, normally with one penalty stroke, to get out of a difficult situation anywhere on the course, except in the penalty area. Like we just discussed, you can't take an unplayable from a penalty area. Okay, the player may decide to take an unplayable, like we said, anywhere except the player. A player is the only person who may decide to treat his or her ball as unplayable by taking penalty relief under 19.2 or 19.3. Caddy can't do it. If you've got an advice giver situation with a high school, college competition, a coach can't be the one that decides that a ball is unplayable. It has to be the player that decides. Like we said, everywhere except the penalty bearer. If a ball is unplayable in a penalty area, the player's only relief option is to take penalty relief under Rule 17. Clear. The big difference in there is Rule 17 deals with where a ball crossed the margin of the penalty area, whereas an unplayable deals with where the ball was found, identified, and deemed to be unplayable. So that's a key distinction when going over relief options on what your reference point will be. Okay, so relief options for an unplayable ball in the general area or on the putting green. The player may take unplayable ball relief using one of the three options, in each case adding one penalty stroke. Again, you can always take stroke and distance relief, go back to where you hit. You have this relief area right here where you may drop the ball. Let's see. Stroke and distance, back on the line relief. So went over this as well. So you have going straight back on line with the flag stick, creating your reference point and dropping in that area. There is no limit on how far back you can go on that line when taking back on line relief for a ball unplayable. If they don't choose a reference point by putting a tee down, which we recommend, the reference point is being treated as the point on the line that is the same distance from the hole as where the drop ball first touched the ground. The size of the relief area from the reference point, one club length, but with these limits must not be nearer the hole than the reference points, maybe in any area of the course. But if it's in more than one area of the course, part of it's in a bunker or and the other part is general area, or part of it is a putting green, what have you, the ball must come to rest in the relief area in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped in the relief area. But once again, I spared you Oprah this time. Model local rule E2 applies again. So when you're taking back on the line relief, there is no additional. I won't regurgitate the rule. Basically, again, the player is okay when taking back on line relief if the ball comes to rest when dropped ahead of the reference point. However, they are not obligated to then play the ball that does come to rest ahead of the reference point. So they kind of get the best of both worlds with that one. If it does that, they don't, and they like it, they don't have to pick it up. But if they do that and it is technically in play, but they don't like the lie, hey, it went closer to the hole, well, I get to redrop. Okay, lateral relief. So player may drop the original ball or another ball in this lateral relief area. The reference point for this, it's not a spot on the line, it's not estimated, it's not a point where it crossed into the thicket of trees or any other scenario where you take an unplayable. The reference point is where the ball lies. So you have to determine and identify where the ball is lying. Size relief area is measured from that point, and instead of 1, you get 2 club lengths either way. So you have a bigger half circle from which to play. It may be in any area of the course, but once again, you have the stipulation where if it's 2 areas of the course are present, ball has to stay in the area in which it first hits the ground when it is dropped. And unlike this, in this situation, if they were to drop like right there and it were to go near the hole, then the reference point, then they would have to redrop. That's the difference between lateral relief and back on the line relief, in that that model local rule does not apply when taking lateral relief.
I have a question, Ted.
Yes.
Maybe this has more to do with proper dropping, but in that diagram you have where the in the center, the person takes 2 club lengths. Let's get it a little bit closer to the gunch. And so they realize that the only option is to drop clearly about where the head of that club would be. They make 2 drops and it drops outside of that relief area. Then they would have the right to place the ball within that relief area. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Craig, you want to?
Well, if they're dropping within the relief area,
Mhm.
it's and it rolls outside, yeah, you're going to get another drop, and if it rolls outside again, you're going to get the place. But now, if they drop it outside the relief area to start with, that's not even counted as a proper drop. So that's
Right.
not one of 2.
But if you're there as a rules official and you're looking at it, they'd measure 2 club lengths, probably ask them if it's really that tight to put a T down to define the farthest point of where the relief area is. And you've got to watch them carefully as they make the drops.
Yes, they should be putting a marker down to indicate the end of the relief area.
They what?
They should be putting some kind of a marker down, like a
Right,
T down,
okay.
like you said,
Yeah.
to indicate the end of their relief area.
Yeah, usually it becomes pretty apparent which direction they're going. You probably don't need to do it at, 3, 4, 5 points of that half circle. Normally it's just the one where they would be dropping.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're unplayable balls in bunker. There's a normal relief option, and there's an extra one that we'll get into. So take the normal relief options, the ball you can, for an unplayable ball in a bunker, maybe it's just the stance is impossible, the lie is impossible, it's in my best interest to not play this shot. You have the option for 1 penalty stroke again, stroke and distance, come back from which you came. Option number 2, you go straight back on a line and you get the 2 club lengths or excuse me, the one club length half circle right there. And again, back of line, the model local rule E12 does apply again, even in a bunker. You also have the 2 club length option going each direction. However, when you do take that lateral relief in the bunker, you must stay in the bunker if you only want to incur 1 penalty shot. So even if 2 club lengths laterally would get you out of the bunker, if you're taking an unplayable in the bunker and taking lateral relief, the ball must stay in the bunker if you only want 1 penalty stroke. There is no situation where you're taking lateral relief from an unplayable lie in a bunker and you're only getting, you can't do that basically. Relief outside a bunker for an unplayable lie in a bunker. Okay.
Where is it?
The extra here though, if they just want to get out of the bunker, the player may take back on line relief here, option number 4. So flag stick all the way back, reference point, 1 club length, model local rule E12 is in effect. But in this situation, they get 2 penalty strokes. So if they want out, it's going to cost them 2, as opposed to just 1 where they stay in the bunker or take stroke and distance. You can always take stroke and distance, but if you want to avoid stroke and distance but get out of the bunker, that's going to cost you 2. Okay. Okay. Well, that is it for me for the day. Thank you all very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Got a little before noon, so 8 minutes.
Hey, Ted.
Yes, questions?
Yeah, this is Tom Hicks. You might talk a second about the provisional ball. What happens when let's say you're standing in the fairway and they hit the ball in the trees and you see a drop, and then they hit another ball that's further down and they come and say, I don't want to play the provisional ball, don't look for it. What are your options?
Well, we discussed earlier, if you don't know where the ball, if you don't know exactly where the ball is, you have found it, then you probably want to wait for approval from the player to start the search. That's the one situation where if you're down there in a trouble hole and the player hits a ball and then that might be lost, then hits a provisional and you don't know exactly where it is, then wait for their approval before you search for it.
But I've had the occurrence where I see the ball rattle around and then drop straight down by a tree. I may be on the other side of the fairway. In essence, I really do know where the ball is if I just walk over to it, even though it's further on the other side.
Well, I think that was the scenario that Phil operated under. If the ball was found and you have identified it as their ball, then that is still the ball in play. And the point of the provisional is for a ball that is lost or out of bounds. And if that ball is not lost and it is not out of bounds, it is still the ball in play. So if they wanted to still take stroke and distance relief in that scenario, that player would have to go back to the tee. And that provisional is not in play.
I don't believe a referee can start a search. The player has to start the search. So does it really matter if you find it? And if the player has not yet started the search, the clock hasn't started.
Yeah, the referee can look for the ball even if the player is not there. There's no rule.
Yeah, but they can look for it, but there's a difference between the start of the search and the
clock
non-partner. Yes, looking for it.
But if somebody identifies a ball,
yeah,
then the ball is found.
Yes,
whether the player's gotten there or not. Search is defined by starting the clock, right?
Yes.
Well, the player has to
No, wait a
start the
minute.
search though.
When the player gets to the area where he believes his ball is, that's when the search starts. But somebody can find the ball beforehand and
Before.
if he identifies the player's ball, the ball is found.
How do you know it's the player's ball, Lee? How do you know it's their ball if you don't know what number or model or anything like that they're playing?
Okay,
You wouldn't know till the player identifies.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But the referee, for example, on Forest Acres West, on number 3, where I always find myself, if I'm near the green and the ball comes into the mess over there, I can start looking for it. I wouldn't know whether it's a player's ball or not until he or she gets there to identify it. And I don't start the clock till the player or the caddy gets there.
Well, but it's different in a penalty area where they would not have hit a provisional ball. I think that's kind of the defining issue. So you're looking for a ball in the penalty area, number 3.
Yes.
And then all you're trying to define is, doesn't matter whether you find it or not, you're just going to figure out where the ball last crossed the margin of the penalty area. On a lost ball where somebody's played a provisional, I guess that's the issue.
Right, that was my point. Let's say the player played a provisional ball and just walked directly to his provisional and hit it again. If he did not want his ball found, never started a search, you could know exactly where that ball is, but it's not found.
That's right.
If you didn't know
That's
the
not
player's
right.
markings, then yeah, and he didn't identify it, then I guess that would be okay. But if you did know, if you happen to be on the tee and the guy said, well, I've got, for some reason, I've got 2 red dots and the title is 3, and you identify it as title is 3, I think that ball's found, in my opinion.
If you have found a ball, it's the player's obligation to identify whether it's his.
Yes.
That's
correct. If you found it after the search started, but the
No,
search
if you
did not
found a
start.
ball, it has nothing to do with when the search started.
If you say to the player, I found a ball, I think it's yours, yes, the player has to come over and identify if it's his. But
no, you don't have to know that. Okay, so on number 3 at Forest Acres, for example, there are actually a ton of players in that mess. So if I find a ball that I think is the player's, I haven't really found that ball until the player gets there and identifies it. And I don't start the clock till the player or the caddy gets there to look for the ball.
Well, again, it doesn't really matter in that situation. Again, Robert, you're in a penalty area. So
yeah,
it doesn't, other than they may want to play the ball as it lies, that would be the only option. There's no provisional in play.
That's correct.
Liz's question is, I think, as John said, once you've identified the ball, he has to come over there and confirm the identification.
Yeah,
But what if he stood on the tee and you're 250 yards away from him and said, you know what? I'm taking stroke and distance. And he walks straight to the provisional ball. You've identified his other ball. It doesn't make any difference.
Well, Barry, if he said he's taking stroke and distance, it's not a provisional.
Correct.
But he would have had to declare that before he hit that second shot.
Correct. Well, we don't know if he said that.
Well, but if he didn't, as they said, if they didn't declare it a provisional, then the other ball, the second ball is the ball in play. Doesn't matter whether.
That's what I mean, Lee. There's a couple of different things going on here. Number one, we don't know whether the player just said, I hit it left and I think it's over by the pine tree and it's only 100 yards out and I can hit a 250-yard drive. So I'm taking stroke and distance and I'm hitting 3. And he hits the ball and takes off. And we're standing there going, hey, wait a minute. I saw your ball. It's over by the pine tree. And he goes, I took stroke and distance.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any difference. But
then you're all set. There's no issue.
Right. Exactly.
That's right.
Now, in most cases, you're right. They're not going to do that. They're going to say, I got a provisional, and now we're back to the beginning. So we start all over again. So
in the playing of a provisional, it's you kind of, when you play a provisional, you're kind of saying, if this ball is found, it is still the ball in play. Doesn't have to be found by you, doesn't have to be found by your caddy. You can tell people, don't look for it. I do not want it found. But if it is found, if just some random person, hey, I found a Titleist 2 with 2 dots, you have 2 red dots, and everybody knows you get that ball's found. You can't just decide to just, you can't say provisional. You don't have to search for it, but you can't ignore it, especially after you say provisional and hit your second shot. Yes.
Yeah. If I were a player and I didn't want somebody to look for my ball, I'd be doing a lot of waving and yelling and making a lot of noise to keep some clown referee like myself going over there to find it. So, the player has responsibilities too. And there are plenty of ways to stop the search, if you will.
Yeah, this is Phil. Normally what I do when we'll take a tee situation is if I see a player hit a ball off the tee and it goes into an area, long grass and everything else, and then the player starts walking from the tee, then I will start to look for the ball. But if I see him hit another ball, I'm assuming he's hitting a provisional ball. And in that case, I won't start looking for the ball until he gets up there. Because it's in your situation that you're describing there, Lee, he might not want anybody to look for that ball.
Exactly.
But if he only hits one ball and starts walking away from the tee box, that ball's in play and I'll start looking for it.
Most times, in my opinion, or my experience, we're on carts and we got plenty of time to drive up to the player and ask him, you want me to go look for that ball? And get the answer and then go decide what to do from there.
Yeah, that's an option. Yeah.
And I, for the most part, always look for the ball, but I always check the player and assess the situation. And that's a simple way to resolve it, is talk to the player first and then go look.
Yeah. A player will not be playing by himself, and they do by rule have to declare to their playing partners and make their, announce their intentions that they are playing a provisional. It has to be, there have to be witnesses to their declaration of a provisional prior to that ball being in the air.
Yeah, and usually if they want to go look for the ball, the whole group is going to start going towards the direction where the ball went. It's not going to be one guy and his caddy walking off. All 6, 3 players and the 2 caddies are going to head in that direction to help look for it, generally. Teddy, you got some chat questions in there too.
Well, hang on. And this question will probably violate the stupid question rule. There are no stupid questions, but it is one. If you've claimed a provisional, hit your provisional, and you find the original ball, but you think that lie sucks, you've got to play your original ball, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, you don't have the option of playing your provisional.
Yeah.
You don't have to play the original, but you don't have the option of playing the provisional.
Well, I like the provisional better though, Lee.
Yeah, you don't get that option.
Sucks to be you.
Yes, ma'am, usually.
Hey, Lee.
Yeah.
One of the issues that I see with the juniors is the parents always being ahead of play. And like at Woodside on number 2, that big batch of trees off on the left is in range off the tee. And so often the player hits in there and a parent wants to run into the woods, and I try to stop them from doing so, telling them if you find any ball, the player's got to identify it. And if he happens to be under a tree and he's hit a provisional that's laying in the middle of the fairway, he doesn't want that. So try to refrain from going in there till the player and his caddy, if there is a caddy, gets to that point.
Yeah, I get that. Of course, I contrarily, I always try and get the parents up ahead, not hovering around the tee or the greens with the juniors. And I want them out there
I do too.
In
I just don't
advance,
want them
and-
in the landing zone. So if somebody's out in the woods, they start wandering out in there.
Yeah, that's the problem. You're right.
There is no right place to put a parent.
Home, in the car.
Eh.
having lunch.
I would agree with that.
That's what I was gonna say. In the car is a great place for them.
Yeah. Put them in a car and let them listen to the radio.
Okay, anything else?
You got chat, embedded ball questions, did they get answered?
I was one that raised it. I just want to clarify, Craig, I appreciated the answer. So if the ball is embedded in the lip, as I said, the bunker, and it's all in dirt or partially turf, not really touching sand, so but technically it's not in the bunker.
Right.
Is that ball in the general area or not?
Well, the bunker does not extend up, okay?
Yeah.
So if it's not, if you've got a lip overhanging the bunker and the ball is embedded in that lip, not in sand, it's not in the bunker. So it's in the general area.
So that is the general area. But Craig, you said that, all right. So you could take.
If the player can find one club, within one club length, a part of the general area to drop into, the player would be allowed free relief from that embedded ball.
Okay.
And if the ball touches in the general area, and even if it rolls into the bunker, the player would be able to play the ball where it first touches the ground.
Or back on the line relief too, right?
Well, not for free relief or an embedded ball.
No, not for embedded ball, yeah.
Just 2 club lengths?
One club length on either side of that.
One club length,
Yeah, one club length. Your reference point is right behind the embedded ball mark.
And that's in the bunker, in which case you can't take relief there because the ball's in the general area.
And if you can't find within one club length a part of the general area to drop the ball into, then you're not going to be allowed free relief from that embedded ball.
So, all right, so you'd have to take, you couldn't drop it into the bunker then, Craig, and play out of the sand?
It's got to drop in the same area of the course for an embedded ball.
Okay, got it. That's the cut point. Mhm. Thank you.
So then you have to hit it and drive it further into that area. Sorry, Craig.
But what may happen there is then if you took Unplayable and dropped, you may have to drop in the bunker is what you're saying though, correct?
No, but you could do back on the line relief or Unplayable though and drop outside the bunker for just one stroke as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're
right.
You're really stuck with stroke and distance.
For what? Embedded ball? For what?
Well, what else are you gonna do if you're in there? You can't drive it further in.
Could take a line of sight.
Yeah, back on the line relief will get you out of, hey, Craig, you muted yourself.
Yeah.
You take back on the line relief as far back as you want to get outside that bunker if you want,
Yeah.
or you can drop in the bunker.
Like in this scenario here on my screen, if you
There you go.
playable live from the
pot, like a pot bunker. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, you're not in the bunker, so you don't have. If you're taking Unplayable, you don't have to drop in the bunker. You can take back online all the way out.
Correct.
Yep.
Stroke.
I have one quick question. My name is Dennis Walsh. What if the
Hi,
ball
Dennis.
is, what if the ball is embedded in the general area above the bunker? It's not in the bunker. So you drop it twice and it rolls back in the bunker. You now get to place it and there's no place to place it because it's so steep that when you try to place it, it just automatically goes back in the bunker.
Craig,
Gotta find
isn't
a way
this
to
where they
place it.
start moving the ball laterally?
I mean, yeah, you got to find a spot where the
Spot
ball
where
will
it'll
stay
come
at
to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the closest spot where it'll come to rest.
Yep.
Not near the hole.
And that can be out of the bunker though.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you again, everybody. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. As always, any questions, don't hesitate to drop us an email. And yep, we will see you down the road.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Good
Ted.
job.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Gary, we do post these on our YouTube channel, so you can see them there.
Got it. Thanks, Ted.
No problem. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, man.